Hello friends, welcome again to my YouTube channel where I share great ideas. This is not what you call maybe a great idea, but I might have some different ways to go about it. There's numbers of YouTube videos that people have made that show how to make it. So it's nothing new, but I might have some new ideas. And I try to learn from the first time I do it and then maybe improve on it there. So anyway, inside outside turning, I'm sure you're probably all acquainted with that, where you've got a hollow type structure. Most commonly done for Christmas tree ornaments. This was the first one I did, and of course I wanted a little bigger. So anyway, the idea was to have a light, a little electronic light, and put it inside and use it as a night light. But I discovered that it sticks up in there quite a ways, and it wiggles and jiggles, and it doesn't sit right. And there's no way that you can lay that to give a little place for that to set. So that was the challenge in doing this one. So I'm going to be showing you how I did that one. This one I saw the design with a heart on it on one of the wood turning channels. I thought, hey, that looks pretty neat. I'll like to try to make one of those. So it looked easy, but it wasn't quite as easy. But it came out pretty good for the first one I did like that. So I'm going to be doing one like that today. This one I learned some things is to make sure they don't slip and you get it accurately glued together, because that side there, you notice that top point doesn't quite line up. Now, to start this project out, you have to have 4 pieces of wood that's perfectly square. And that's probably the hardest thing to do in doing this project, is to get them square and exactly the same size. Now, I have a planer, of course, and but I've also got a drum sander. And I've planed them, run them through the drum sander several directions to get them all exactly square, flat, of the same size. You might not get them square though, so that's where the problem is. You could get kind of a wonky square. And then once you got that done, and you put them all together and kind of choose how they go together, so they got flat side, so there's no gaps there. It seemed mine were pretty good. I had to move a couple pieces to get them to fit together. So for the first lathing, you're going to do the inside part, and you have to fasten these together sometime in some way. And you could look on the internet under inside outside turning. You'll find quite a variety of different methods that people have used to do that. But I've chose to do it a little different way, and maybe somebody is already doing it that way, I'm not sure. Anyway, what I'm going to do is glue the 1/2 inch of the ends together, because you make these a little longer and you can just cut that off. But I want to start lathing this probably in an hour or so, and the glue won't be set like it is overnight. So to put the glue on, I got a bunch of these little brushes here. I actually got them for my metal work, putting oil on it when I'm doing lathe work on metal. But they work good on work a lot better than your fingers and trying to squirt it on, getting glue all over the place. So anyway, once you've got them all set together, take the top two and put them, just flip them together like that. And then a little bit of glue on both ends. Bring them back together. Squeeze them. And take your other two and flip them apart. I'm glad I discovered that before I was totally finished. Okay, so flip those together. You're keeping them in the same orientation as what you did when you first set it up, and I think we can get by with just putting glue on the ends of those. And then let's bring that up and squeeze it together. And make sure that the ends line up exactly in a perfect cross. As long as they're held together, the glue will just set there, and you probably wouldn't need clamps. Now if you use clamps, which would be okay, but you know from experience when you clamp something it tends to shift, it kind of squeezes to one side or another. But do whatever you please, but I'm just going to just let this sit here after I get it lined up and wait an hour. Okay, I've let this sit for a considerable length of time, probably not quite an hour, but the time I get it on the lathe it'll be at least that much time. So now we have to do a couple things, prepare it for the lathe. Now you need some sort of awl, and you need to poke a hole right where they cross. And you can see, now I've skimmed these off a little bit with a saw, so they're nice and flat, so you can see where the thing is there. But where those join together, you need to take some sort of sharp object and wiggle around, make a nice pinprick there. And that's extremely important because for this project, you don't even have to draw any lines because it's already got the lines from the gluing. So I'll do both ends. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So let's just take a minute here and discuss how we're going to drive it. Now, most of your lathes, you'll have some sort of spur center there. This one looks a little different because it's got a threaded piece on it because I've got a homemade lathe and it's for 1 inch. But most of you will be using a spur center in the Morris taper in the headstock. And these work very good for a lot of projects. And it probably would work okay for this one because we're not going to take a lot of wood in it and it'll be pretty well balanced. But I want to, this one I made for my lathe. You can see it there. It's got, it's a nut, welded piece of metal, and then 4 spikes sticking out there. So I'm going to use this one because it goes out into each square here, and will hold it from moving a thing there. So that one I'll put on one end, and the other end of your lathe, I think most of you have a live center with a small cup on it, and that will work okay. Just leave your pieces together a little longer maybe. But when I was thinking of this project, I don't have I just got the pointed live center. I don't have a cup type center, so I thought, well, I'd like to modify that to make a cup. So I made a big cup. This one here, you can see that there. Got the little point in the center and the ridge around there. that will go well out into each piece. Now I know most of you don't have that, but I'm sure what you have will work. So we're going to put that right into that little, center it right into that little point there. And you can't do this with a regular cup center, with a live center. I can bash that one in and make a imprint there. Okay, so you can see my imprint there, goes well out into the quadrants there. And then the other side, I've got the same thing, and I'll put those points, one in the center of each quadrant there, and I'll bash that in too. And there you can see the little points there that I've put in there. And you could make one of these yourself. Just take a 1-inch nut and a piece of metal, I guess. I had to cut that out and drill out your points there. You could do that. That's a great idea too, just a modification to a regular one. Now, we want to, since I can't drive that in the length of those spikes, so I'm going to have to drill it. So you should, in your shop, you should have the center drill. I'm always mentioning that. And that will start those holes with a center drill. The tip is shaped different, and these center hit drills are always used on the metal lathe too, if you want to drill a hole in the center of something. There's a regular drill bit, you put it in and it'll just wander around. Okay, so I just switched to a straight bit. Now I'll drill those down a little bit. Okay, you can see the holes that I have there a little better now. Okay, so this one here, just got to figure out which way I put it in, which was this way. Now it'll fit right down there. That's seated in there. Now that'll drive anything. I've driven big ugly burls and all sorts of things with that, and it doesn't slip. Anyway, I got to answer the phone and we'll get back. Okay, now it's ready to decide what kind of shape that you're going to make it. I've showed you this one, which was the first one that I did, and it served the purpose. That was very interesting. And then this one here with the heart shape. Now I want to make another heart shaped one. I'll show you how to do that. So you got to decide where your heart or whatever shape you're going to do on here. So it's a good idea to take a felt pen or something and draw it out. Now, when we lathe in, we'll do the U-shaped here. So we just lathe in like this. And then the other side, and then we're going to make this will be round. It actually comes out like that, see? And that'll be that would be the position. So we would start, our cut would be here in that area there. So we plan, and you can plan on what you're going to do at the top too. You might want to just come up and make something at the top here, fancy or whatever. And I've made these so they sit down, and then of course that'll come down and pop out. And so you get that would just show what we're going to do with the top and bottom. It doesn't really look quite right in the center there, but that's a good idea anyway. So now we'll go to the heart. Okay, now I've drew the heart on it, so it's just, so it looks like a heart. But what we're trying to do is trying to decide where it's going to be positioned in the length of this here. And then we made so you can see right here is going to be where we'll enter and start lathing. And it's not here, it's not this point, but it's this point here. And then our wood's going to have to be hollowed out there. So anyway, I've kind of used up all my sides here because I did this and forgot to turn the camera on. But so our heart, I'll draw it on this side. Okay, so we transpose this over here. It would probably look more like that. You can see the two hearts there with that other line. And then when you lay it down, you got to leave a section. Now I would leave more than what I've drawn there. And probably same with this one too. I'd leave more wood in the center. Okay? So that's just an idea. But you can just take your piece of wood, you know what you want to do, and just start anywhere you want. Just make sure you leave a section up here and a section down here to finish your project there. Okay, I've got it mounted on the lathe with my super center there, and it tends to spin okay. But what I suggest you do is to take a piece of tape and tape both ends, because if you have a smaller cup center, smaller spur centers, the tape will, if it starts to break, instead of a piece just flying off, the tape will hold it. Now I've got to go get my tape. Okay, here's my tape here. It looks like electrical tape, but it isn't. It's actually got a filament in it, and it's built all together different. I don't know where I got it from, but anyway, I maybe thought it was electrical tape, but it's not, so it's a good opportunity to use it up. It'll stick, believe it or not. If you do this on the lathe, it's just a little easier. You could do it before, but this way you can rotate it and you can pull. I'd go 2 rounds. Okay. Okay, there we go. And I'll do the same on the other end. Okay, I got my heart on backwards. I want the top of the heart up here, but it's just a matter of the size and the positioning anyway. And since we're going to be lathing, don't forget your face mask, especially with a square when we start out when it's square, because you get these chips can fly out and get in your eyes. So I'll just make a few cuts on here. I'm probably going to use a bowl gouge, and we don't want to come in straight, but this one's going to curve up and it's going to be deeper on this side here. So I'll just make a few cuts there. I'm going to cut towards okay, I've just got it rounded up here, and we just got to continue going deeper and deeper and deeper. And so at the top of this, we can go basically straight down and then hollow the top part of our heart out after. It's got to be hollowed out inside there. So I'll just go ahead slowly, riding the bevel, and continue cutting that till we get to a small space in the middle there. I'll show it to you every so often. Okay, here it is laid out. You just kind of have to go by feel. You bring this down, and you got take a look at it, you got a quarter here, and you're going to have to come from the other side and round, and it's going to have to be rounded. So you bring it down here to the width that you want, that you think you can do. It's just a matter of trying. Now I've hollowed this out a little bit, but not excessively. It's not going to make a very sharp looking heart, but it's very difficult in here to get this to hollow back in. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and sand it. I used bowl gouge, spindle gouge, different things. I found that the parting tool worked good for cutting the corners and coming down part way. You're able to stabilize it quite well there. And you want to keep these edges sharp as possible. This got a little bigger than I planned because I caught the corners a couple times and had to keep working back. You'll find that too, and any time you do it. So I'll just go ahead and sand this up now, and then we'll take it apart and re-glue it together again. Okay, I've got it sanded. What I used for sanding was some of this belt material, which I've talked about in previous videos. It's a lot better than paper. Form around your finger. You get whacked with these corners if you're not careful here. You get whacked once or twice, and then I decided, well, I'd put on a tight rubber glove, so that helped a bit, and then in case you get whacked. And I was able to use some of these too in this area here. If you put a piece around like that, you'll round off these corners. You don't want to do that. You want to use something that will sand without rounding the corners at all. So anyway, it's not bad. It's fairly smooth. Now what I want to do here, I want to put a gilding on here. You can get all kinds of different things. This here is called Rub and Buff. I had ordered it, and I used it on the first one I did, but I put it on after it was all together because I didn't have it at that time. But so I'm kind of experimenting here. I want to try to do it before while it's nice and round, and then you don't have to reach inside. So I decided to put rubber glove on here. And it's just a matter of wiping it on. That's a lot easier than reaching in after. It dries quite quickly, so we'll be able to take that apart. I imagine I could even rotate it too, but we'll just do it like this for now. It's called Rub and Buff. So you rub it and then you buff it. A little tube like this is probably about $15 or so US. I had to get it from the States, and it took it's over Christmas, so it took a month and a half to get it. I think it was into February. I ordered in December and it was into February. Okay. That's what that is. Next thing we're going to do is take this apart. So I'll just touch this up a bit and then take it off the lathe. Okay, I've got it off the lathe. The gilding looks quite good. I've let it dry for 20 minutes or so, and I can rub it and it doesn't really transfer to my finger there. So fairly happy with it. We'll see if it works. Now it doesn't work to turn on the lathe when it's not dry. It kind of rubbed it off. I had to redo it, some of it there, so that's just a hint there. So anyway, I've taken the stuff off the tape, and you can see my live center there, big one, and the drive center. Anyway, let's just see. We could cut the ends off, but let's just take a chisel here. It hasn't been overnight or anything, but it has been about 3 hours. Oh, There, that popped apart fairly easily. Tore a few fibers on the end here, but seemed to work there. Yeah, I should have had this over a little farther. There, okay. Okay, we got that apart. Once you get it loose on one end, you can pull it off the other end. Oh, crumb. You got me too excited here. Let's put this back together. This is what's really important here, is you number these. 1, 2, we're going to go in clockwise directions, 3, and 4, okay? Because we're going to have to switch these, that way they won't come mixed up. So let's put an arrow that way, an arrow this way, an arrow that way, and an arrow that way. Okay, so that's super important to get it back together. I got ahead of myself there, but if you do, just try to get it back together exactly like you had and put the numbers on there. Okay, so we've got those two apart, and we just gotta pop these two apart. Okay, that one's so hard to see where the line is on that one. Okay, there we go. Now, let's put this together here. So we'll switch this over. There's a 1 and a 2. Okay, there we go. Now you can see how that goes just on those two. There's a 1, the 2, the arrows point towards the center. Okay, so we'll go this way here. We gotta get a 3 pointing towards the center and a 4 pointing towards the center. Okay. That's how we put it back together. Okay. So let's look to see if our heart came out. Okay. There's our heart shaped. Well, that's not as bad as I thought it would be. Get it so you can see it good. There we go. Okay. Well, that goes this way. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this together and clamp it. And it's going to have to sit, let's say, 4 or 5 hours or overnight. Because we're going to be lathing it round now. And I'll use the glue. I'll do 2 sides. And when I put the glue on with the brush, I won't put it right up to the edge because I don't want a whole lot squeezing out inside there. It'll be hard to get off. The same with down here. We can glue it, but stay away from the edge and it'll just seep up towards these edges here. Okay, there, and then and we'll glue these sides first on both of them, and then put it together. Okay, so I don't think you need to watch me do that. I'll just work on it here, and then we'll be ready to remount it on the lathe and start lathing again. Okay, I've got the glue on. And we can do one final check there to make sure that we've got it all in order. That part looks good. And then what's super important is all these points here. Each heart, I'm going to check to make sure it comes together exactly at the point here and at the point there. And go around, check each one, and then we'll let it sit for a few minutes here before I put the clamping pressure on there. So you don't want it greasy with glue before you start clamping it, because then it'll slip a little bit. And on the first one that I did, I got a little slip there on that one side, and but we want it perfect this time because it'll probably give this one away. Anyway, yeah, and those hearts will get bigger because the bottom of the heart's way down here. As we lay this round, this shape here that you see here will actually become larger. So we'll let that set probably even till, what time is it anyway? Probably maybe this evening, but I think tomorrow would be a good time to work on that. I have a little bit more time, so we'll see you tomorrow. Well, I've got it all together. I've left it just for about 3 or 4 hours, and it's shop's nice and warm, so I'm going to turn on it some today, and won't probably get it all done. But anyway, I've got the centers done. I put the drive holes on this side, and notice I've drawn a circle around there and then a line here. And instead of lathing it and knocking all those corners off on the lathe, I'm just going to cut them off on the bandsaw. It'll make it a whole lot easier when it comes to lathing it around. It's show you a little jig and trick that I use for pretty well all types of spindle turning when I got square corners. Here's a very simple way to cut those corners off. I used to do it just kind of by hand and by guess and whatever, but then I made this V cut block out there, put a screw at one end, and now my spindle turning will just fit in there. And that's the reason for I put the lines on the side there. So it kind of gives me a guide there. Anyway, we'll give her a shot here as soon as we get some power for the... Okay, here we go. Okay, there we go. That was very easy to do. It's kind of scary because you cut along here and you're quite close to where the thing is, but actually when we lay it down it's going to be much farther. And then you're left with some triangle pieces where you can put them on a table or something like that, and use them for when you're doing some finish work. It'll raise them off the table there. Anyway, I'll go put this on the lathe and I'll give her a shot. The first thing that you should do is just lathe it round and then start figuring out after that what you're going to do with it. So I've got a spindle gouge here, a large one, so we'll stand to one side and start at this end. Okay, so do you notice how smooth that was with these corners off here? It just made it so much easier. And so I'll go ahead and round this out and see what it looks like. Okay, I've got it rounded out, and you need a sharp chisel because around these areas you could get splinters. You want to keep these areas as sharp as possible. Now sandpaper will fix that up. Now once I got it rounded out, where this part of the heart is, I don't want to go any thinner. I'm only about, oh my, 3/16 of an inch thick in there. But now we'll start tapering this down here, and then this will be rounded at the top here down. So if you can, make a diagram of what you want it to look like. I think it's better to cut plane this way than coming this way on these edges here. If you come this way, those edges can catch and tear off, but if we go this way, they're supported by the fibers. So I'll try that. I'll just freehand this for a little bit. I know I want it to look somewhat like the first one I did. And have to be careful because you're driving by not very thick material there. Okay, you can see these hearts now, they're getting larger. As I lay this down, taper, they keep getting bigger and bigger and longer. And they could go quite long if you tapered it down fairly small. But I don't want to taper it down too much because I want to put one of these lights in there. So I've got to allow enough wood to drill the hole. The first one I did, I didn't measure it, and I was so close I thought I would come through when I bored it. So I'm going to leave this, about 58 millimeters. This one has a scale on it, a millimeter scale, so I can go down a bit farther there yet before I figure out what I'm going to do with the base there. And of course the top will come right around. Anyway, we'll keep working at it. So I've done all the lathing that I'm going to do on this part here. You can see here these things have enlarged a lot from when I started. I've left this big enough to bore a hole into for my lamp. I've laid it down here to fit a chuck. Here's I'm going to drive it from this end here with one of these, and so then I'll cut it off here, cut that little piece off there, and then try to bore the hole through there. So that's what I'm going to try to do next here. So I'm going to have to be careful here because I don't want to put too much torque on these webs because they're very, very thin. So I'll take it in steps here. Take a small amount, smaller hole, bigger hole, and then on farther up. Yeah, okay, so I'll get this all remounted, and I think I'll put it in on another lathe. Okay, I've reversed mounted it here, and now I'm going to start drilling the hole from the bottom side. I'm going to use several Forester bits, and I've already gone through and made a little groove where they're going to be. And the first hole I'm going to use is a twist drill here. I'm doing this on my metal lathe because that wood lathe I was using is homemade, and it's not as, you might say, accurate. I don't have the speed control. So if I have to do something delicate, I do it on my metal lathe here. Just one of the things I have to do. Anyway, we'll just start it up here and start that hole. And I'm all the way through. So we'll just go ahead and I'll start the other Forester bit holes. Okay, I just want to show you a couple other things that I did on this here before I go ahead and finish it off. When I thought this one was going to be perfect, but I had that one that slipped a little bit, so these didn't line up. But don't worry about that, because as long as it doesn't slip too much, you can fix that. What I did was I used the Dremel type tool, and you can go right through the hole there, and there's just a little ridge there, and you can whip that off with a little Dremel. You may not have that. Here's another thing would go on a larger, like a drill or something, or just plain sandpaper. And then I just after I took that sharp edge off, I took some sandpaper and smoothed it off there, and now they look pretty good. And so now they line up pretty good there all the way around. So that's good. And in the bottom here, to get those to line up, I just took a X-Acto knife there and just went a little click down there like that. Of course, when you make one, you won't have those problems, so yours will be perfect, I know that. Anyway, originally I put the gilding on paste before, when I had it on the lathe. I thought that would be a super idea because it was all smooth and you didn't have to reach around inside, but that was a bad idea for a number of reasons. But if you try it, you'll find out. Put it on after, because you can go in here with your finger. You can go in here easily with your finger and put that on. And I needed to put some on where the hole drilled through for the lamp there anyway. And then of course you got little cleanup, little things you can do here and there. And you can go in here and do a little extra sanding. I put the gilding on the first one I made when I had it complete like this. And then and I thought, well, it'd be a better idea to put it on the lathe, but not a good idea. Anyway, and then if you get any on the outside, you can just take a very fine piece of sandpaper and clean up your edges before you put your finish on. So anyway, I'm just going to cut this off now and make the top for it.